welcome to another tutorial in Visual Studio. We're gonna talk about variables in C#. To show you some thoughts, I'm gonna start a new project called a console application, and I'm gonna call it variables. And I'm gonna size up the text a little bit so you can see a little bit better than my last tutorial. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is how to correctly name your variables. And this is a very important subject, because naming your variables correctly will decrease your coding time significantly. Once your code goes to thousands of lines, you thank yourself for naming your variables in a clear way, so you can remember what that variable contains. You might want to say, well, I'm a smart person, I can remember that by myself, but think again. If you review your code in a few months in the future, you won't remember what that one variable was on line 250, trust me. So the naming, let's say we need to make a variable for containing our bank account balance. We could name it balance, though balance does not really tell you that it's the bank account balance. It only tells you that you have a balance, and that might be something totally different. So let's call it my bank account balance. Now, you cannot think of many other possibilities than that this variable contains my bank account balance. So this would be a pretty good name. And also notice that by typing the name of the variable, I'll start out with a small letter, and then every next word in that name will start with a capital letter, capital B, A, and a capital B. By using this format along the way, you will notice that your readability in the code will become a lot better. Let's talk about the most used types for variables in C#, at least at the beginning stage. The first type we're going to talk about is the int, or the integer, which can only contain a whole number. It can be in the positive or the negative side, and as long as you're keeping to the whole numbers, you can make that variable an int. So say int apples, or number of apples, can be 5, 6, 7 or -10, but not 10.5, 5.25. So no decimal numbers in the int. The decimal numbers are for the double type. As I said, the decimal numbers in here, you can also make them positive or negative. So if you want, say, a variable bank account balance, you rather make it a double, because I don't think your customers would like you to chop off the cents of the bank account balance by making that variable an int. And last but not least, we'll be looking at the string type, which contains a character or a set of characters, say the letter A, or maybe the text hello. It can also contain numbers, but mind you that if you type numbers in a string, you cannot calculate with it until you've converted it back to an int or a double. Let's get back to the program here, and to the third part of this tutorial, which will be about declaring your first variable. And by declaring, I mean telling the program that it's going to use a variable. And how to do that? That's the question. Well, firstly we need to tell the compiler which type we're going to use. And let's say we want to make a variable bank account balance, which we just discussed. We would like that to be a double. If you forgot why, then just scroll back a bit. So we have a double, my bank account balance, and we might want another variable, let's say apples in a box, and apples in a box will always be a full number. It will not be a decimal number, I bet. At least I do not save my apples by the halves, so I'll make that an int. Number of apples in the box. Right, so we have a double and an integer, and we could assign a value to those variables, and assigning values to variables will be the fourth part of this tutorial. Assigning a variable is, well, easy as pie really. You just type an is operator behind the variable, and you type its value behind it. So if you want the number of apples in the box defined, you type the is and then the number of apples, like 6. Same goes for my bank account balance. Let's say we type 250.15 as our decimal number, and you'll see we won't get errors because those are valid numbers for those types. We can show them on the screen by typing the method writeLine, and let's say my bank account balance is, and then plus my bank account balance, and let's see if it displays this. And I forgot a little newbie thing. The console has the property to end itself when there's nothing to do, so let's add a read key to the end so it stays open and waits till you press a key, and then the program will end. So here we go. My bank account balance is 250.15. That's correct. Now let's say I want another line. Console.writeLine, the number of apples in the box is number of apples in the box, and we should see that it writes the number 6, and it does. But what happens if we type if we are going to lie that this is not an integer but a decimal, like 6.5? Well, what happens is that Visual Studio automatically sees a variable or a value that's not compatible with the variable. So this value 6.50 is not compatible to be in number of apples in the box because it's not an int. The other way around, we could make a double 250, and that gives no error because 250.00 is also a double, and we can test that out, and it writes down 250. That works. Try to add a string variable to our code, which we could do by typing, how surprisingly, string and then the name of our variable. For instance, my name. And we might want to fill my name with some user input, so we could bind it to the console operator readLine. My name is console.readLine, and what this does is that the console will open, it will wait until the user presses enter, and everything that's been typed before the user pressed enter will be a string put into my name. And we can use that by saying hello name, my or your bank account balance is, and then your bank account balance. So we could do that by here typing hello and then my name plus, and then your bank account balance is blah de blah. We could test that when we run the program. We expect it not to show anything until we've pressed enter. Let's see. Yes, it's not showing anything, so I could write down my name, Dave, and press enter, and then it shows me hello Dave, your bank account balance is 250. Well, thank you. And that's how you declare and use a string. The other way, you could also declare or assign a string in the code here by this and run it, and it should do the same. The fifth part in this tutorial will be about operators, and the operators I'm going to talk about are plus, the minus, the times operator, the divide by, and the modulus. And my guess is that you know the first four of them, and you might not know what this is, but we'll get to that point sooner or later. First off, you might notice that we've used this plus operator already, and it's not to calculate at all. It's apparently to make one large string out of plenty of smaller strings, and that's correct. The plus operator can be used to connect one or two or more strings together to form one big string. Same goes for calculation. You can use a plus to calculate certain values, as I can show in an example here. I can say I'm going to withdraw some money from my bank. So my bank account balance is my bank account balance minus 27.5. This can be written down smaller, but let's just keep it this way to make it easier to read for now. This is not generating errors because this is a double and bank account balance is double as well, so that will be just fine. And if we run it, we'll see it calculates with the correct result. But if we say we want to eat 1.5 apple, we are going to have a problem, I guess. We can say number of apples in the box is number of apples in the box minus 1.5, and this already gives an error because Visual Studio already sees that we're trying to subtract something from an integer which is not an integer, and that's not possible. So what we can do is make this a 1, and then it should display the number 5, and so it does. Maybe another thing to do is let's multiply our number of apples by 6. Multiply by 6, and we expect it to be 36, which is the case, and we could divide it by, let's say, 3, and then we expect it to be 2, which also is the case. But these are operations which results in a whole number, so we aren't creating a problem for ourselves. But what if we have an integer of 6 and we divide it by an integer of 4? What will happen? And you can make a guess, and we'll see the result will be 1. So apparently if we divide 6 by 4, it will result in 1. And why is this? Well, as I've said, the result of this division is 1.5, and because it's an int, it just chops off the decimal part of this number, so it leaves just the 1. let's talk about the last operator we are going to talk about today, which is the modulus operator. And the modulus operator, it gives you the rest of a division. So say we have an integer of 6 which we divide by an integer of 4. The result of that division will be 1, but the rest of that division is 2, because 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 will be the rest, and we can calculate that more easily by taking the modulus. So we could say number of apples in the box is 6 modulus 4, and that should result in the value 2. Let's see, and that is 2. Let's say we want to add a bit more difficult calculation to our code. Let's say we want to calculate our interest rate of my bank, divide that by the 12 months in a year, so I get my interest per month. So I could make another variable, let's say a double interest rate, and let's make it 3%, and we can calculate what my bank account balance, or rather what will be my interest. So make a double actual interest per month, and that will be we take my bank account balance times the interest rate minus my bank account balance divided by 12. If we show this new line, interest per month, we don't get the right value here. I would sign up for this amount of interest at this balance. No, of course that's wrong. What C# does, or what the compiler does, is it calculates the values from left to right, and not according by the mathematical rules. So what we're gonna do is we have to place some round brackets in places of which the calculations need to be done beforehand, and that might be that we want to calculate what the interest rate is at first, but also the code needs to calculate what is left of my balance, of what is left of the interest if we subtract the actual balance. And after that we can divide by 12, and if we calculate that, we'll see that the interest per month is 0.625, which I guess would be an accurate calculation. I hope you guys have learned a few things in this tutorial. Any questions, please ask them below here, and we'll see you on my next tutorial, I hope. Goodbye.